Okay, professors. So, because of the COVID-19 crisis, suddenly many of you are finding yourselves teaching online for the first time. Or you've taught online before, but now you're taking a class that was supposed to be brick and mortar, and now you're teaching on, you have to change it to online, sometimes just in a couple of days. How are you going to go about doing that? So, I've had several people reach out to me because I have a lot of experience teaching online. I have a lot of experience not just teaching online, but teaching in a kind of a crisis situation where maybe someone got sick and I had their class to be taken over, or that kind of thing. So I'm here to give you advice. And this is for the professors out there who find themselves in an emergency situation. I've been saying these sorts of things one-on-one to people, but now I thought, well, I'll just make something general for all my colleagues out there who are interested in hearing about this. So the first thing is, be reasonable with yourself. When you have an emergency situation, no one expects it to be perfect. They just expect you to do your best. And this is that kind of situation. So for example, you might notice that the camera that I'm using is not as good as my normal quality camera. That's because the situation I'm in right now, I can't use that. I can't use my normal good camera. I do have my good microphone though, so the sound quality is probably going to be pretty good. Also, I happen to be recording next to a furnace which kicks on every so often. And if it kicks on in the middle of this, just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to let it keep going. I'm hoping it doesn't, but I'll just keep talking over it if that happens, just to sort of demonstrate that you want to muddle through the best you can. So don't let the perfect be an enemy of the good. Don't freak out just because you have got to do this and you're like, well, the quality isn't going to be as good as I normally do. Of course it isn't. I don't think anyone really expects it to be as good as normal. I have a lot of experience in this, and I'm going to tell you that a class that I intended to be brick and mortar, if I have to change it midway through the semester to online, there's going to be some sort of ways in which some things fall, into the cracks. And I'll just do my best to get through that. And I expect the students to do their best, and we'll try to be understanding when they can't as well. All right, so first rule, settle down, be reasonable with yourself. All right, so the comments I'm going to make are going to be broad, very broad, because there are a lot of different platforms. I've used Blackboard and Canvas a lot. There are other people who use Moodle and things. Some of you maybe don't, your school doesn't really have a lot of online ed, hasn't traditionally had that, and so you're not accustomed to using them. And I went online and I saw that a lot of people, a lot of these videos instructing people on how to do online ed talk about like their fancy audio editing and things. Don't worry about that for now, okay? You just want to get this through quick and dirty so you can teach the students the best you can without investing in a lot of new equipment, without learning a whole lot of new stuff. Okay, so first of all, look at what's remaining in the semester and break it down into the smallest possible units that you can, and then create materials based around small units. Okay, so I do a lot of video lectures, so I try to keep them short. 5 to 10 minutes at the most if I can. Sometimes they run a little bit long. If you do audio, the same thing. If you write things out, the same thing. Try to keep them short as possible. Now, that doesn't mean have less material. It means keep the material that you have short. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, if I give the students five different chunks that are 10 minutes each, the students are going to watch all of those. If I give them one 30-minute chunk, even though that's 20 minutes less material than I would have given them the other way, way fewer of them are going to look at it. It's just the way that they're wired. So if you can break it down to smaller chunks, you'll get better engagement from your students. Also, for yourself, especially when you're maybe preparing material quickly and in not an ideal environment, for yourself, having these little chunks allows you to be interrupted. If you need to give a 45-minute lecture and, your kids are coming in because they want to borrow the car keys or whatever's happening with you, every time that happens, that's either something you're going to have to leave in, or you're going to have to edit out, or you're going to, worse, if you've never done this before, start from the beginning. If you do little 5-10 minute chunks, you're less likely to get interrupted. And if you get interrupted, you don't lose as much material. If you're doing it fast and dirty, the way a lot of you are doing it suddenly, that's a good route to go. Okay. All right. So what about if you want to do videos? You're like, I don't have a fancy camera. I don't have fancy video equipment. That's fine for either video or audio. It'd be great if you had a fancy microphone. It'd be great if I had my good camera. But one thing I found is that students actually respond better to you appearing to talk to them more personally. So if you look at my very old videos, a lot of them are gone because I had them on Blip TV and they're gone now. But maybe you can still find some of them floating around the internet. I'm standing at a podium. It's like you're watching me in the classroom. And the students didn't engage with those quite so well as me talking directly into a webcam. So if all you have is a webcam, or if all you have is your cell phone, use your phone, use your webcam, and talk up close and personal to the students. If you have to do audio, the same thing. Don't worry that you don't have fancy audio equipment and the sound quality is not that great. First of all, the students are going to have to be an understanding of you the same way that you are of them in this crisis situation where everything is suddenly flipped. And aside from that, I actually think that kind of, people are accustomed to dealing with one another in that way. When you're video chatting with someone, most of the time, they don't have the fanciest equipment. They're just talking to you on their phone or on their computer, right? That's the way that our students are used to it, and they're going to be fine with that. Now, this is going to seem like I'm reversing myself, but one thing I would suggest, though, is try to dress the way that you would in the classroom. My background here isn't awesome. Normally I have a professional background behind me. But to create in them an expectation that this is real, that this is a real class, that something with some academic validity is going on. So I had on a much more casual sweater than this. Normally I wear a bow tie. Didn't have one with me where I am right now. And so because of that, I just put on a little bit more formal sweater to do that, just to demonstrate that to you. So try to demonstrate that it's professional while at the same time that you are a real person. Now that real person touch is what they're going to be missing. So that gets to the next thing, which is create as much interaction among the students as possible. If you can have discussion boards, have discussion boards. If you can have any kind of online meetup, have an online meetup. Something where the students feel like they're not alone, where they're working together. Normally, I am against group projects. I really am. But in this case, if you might have something which could be a group project that they can work on virtually without meeting in physical space, but they can work on virtually together, to get them to interact in that way might be useful. Again, I'm kind of against group projects, so that's a whole other issue. But discussion boards, anything where they talk to one another. Of course, there are some classes which you would use them a lot more for. So my lit classes, we have extensive discussion boards, whereas say my linguistics classes, we have almost none. But there are subjects about which I could have them do that. Maybe even have them do it for a grade. And I would move in that direction because this interaction actually will make the students treat it less like a correspondence course and more like a real course that they're just taking in an asynchronous, fashion. And then what I would say finally, besides making that kind of interaction, is find ways to create a personal connection between you and the student. And the way I would normally suggest you do this is, even on things which are going to be graded objectively, try to offer an audio or visual grade with that if it's possible for you. Just a few comments. And even if that means like in the, 2 weeks from now on one assignment, just 1 minute of audio comments to a student saying, hey, I noticed you're having a problem with this. This is a few things that you might look at. Even if what you're doing is something which you could just as quickly just put a comment on the page for, by giving them your voice or giving them your face telling them this. It reminds the student that there's a real person, that they're not dealing with an AI, that they're dealing with a real professor, and that this really matters. So these are just some suggestions. Muddle through, do the best you can. Everyone knows that it's not going to be perfect, but if you do your best, a legitimate student who's really trying, who sees this situation, they're really going to learn as much as they can. And I think you might find that you're better at online teaching than you imagined you were. So good luck to all of us. And I hope your students learn a great deal from you.